be happy when we move to Dandastorton. I've heard there are many kind people there." Just as they were talking, Mr. Anderson entered the room. "Is everyone done packing?" he asked. "Once we are all done, we will leave 9:00 tomorrow." Mr. Anderson took a short stop when he noticed that Amy was looking down with a grumpy face and some tears trickling down her eyes. "Now how's my beautiful Amy?" he asked. "And why is she crying?" "She's still sad about transferring," Aunt Italy explained. "Daddy," Amy yelled, "please tell our auntie that we can't transfer and we won't go to Dandastorton." "Oh, Amy," said her father, "I already told you that we sold the house and we will transfer to a new one. Besides, you've been staying here for 11 years and it's now time that we have a change."
Whoa,
"But I don't
you're
want to
so
go."
cool.
Amy hesitated. "My life was perfect. I am content staying here and you can't change my mind." "Have you forgotten?" her father asked. "Your homeschooling this year has already been over. This Friday afternoon is already your summer vacation." "I'd rather stay here all summer," Amy muttered. Aunt Italy zipped Amy's luggage. "All right, Amy," she said, "your things are all set and packed up for tomorrow. Now, why don't we all go downstairs while I bake some cookies and maybe they can cheer you up?" Amy's face lightened up. "Cookies!" she exclaimed. Amy always liked eating cookies, and the ones that her aunt would bake were her favorite. "Thank you, Amy," said Mr. Anderson to his sister. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "My pleasure, Alex," Aunt Italy replied. Down the stairs Amy went with a cheerful face. She almost forgot about transferring. The only thing in her mind now was cookies. "Mommy, our auntie is going to bake me some cookies," she told her mom. "Well, I can see that you are quite in a good mood all of a sudden," Mrs. Anderson replied. "Maybe you've changed your mind about transfer." Just as Mrs. Anderson was about to say the word transferring, her husband looked her in the eyes and put his finger on his lips, which meant to say, "Shh, don't remind her." Mr. Anderson didn't like the thought of his daughter crying into bitter tears again. He wanted Amy to enjoy her time in the house while she still can. After all, it was her last day to do so, while Aunt Adalie, or Aunt Amy for short if you'd like to put it, was preparing the cookie dough like she always would whenever she baked cookies in the kitchen. Amy sat on the couch in the living room with a content face. She looked around the living room she was in. Books on the shelves, pictures of her family hanging on the wall, and the flower vase filled with different types of flowers on the small table in the middle of the room. She started to wonder where in the world those flowers came from, for Amy never left the house. It was always her Aunt Italy who went outside to pick flowers and place them inside that vase. She started to become curious about what it was like to be outdoors. Her father always left to work every weekday from 9:00 to 3:00, which was the same time Amy had her homeschooling. Her mom would usually leave to buy groceries or other things occasionally. Aunt Italy was the one who would homeschool Amy every weekday. She was like Amy's closest friend. After all, she was Amy's teacher and company in the house, and she would always look after Amy and bake her cookies every time she saw it good to do so. For the first time in forever, Amy started to think to herself that maybe going outside wasn't a bad idea after all. Maybe it would be nice to see the world outside the house she has been staying in for more than 11 years. "Amy," her aunt called in the middle of Amy's thoughts, "the cookies are ready."
Yeah,
"Coming,
it
our
worked,
auntie,"
yes.
Amy replied as she got off the couch into the kitchen.
Stop!
As she sat down at the kitchen table ready to eat the cookies, Aunt Amy brought them to the table to cool down. "Don't forget to wash your hands, Amy," reminded her aunt. "You don't want germs on your hands while you handle these cookies." "Yes, our auntie," Amy replied. She got out of her seat and went to the sink to wash her hands. As she was doing this, she started to ask her aunt some questions. "Our auntie, where did you get those flowers on the table in the living room?" "From outside, Amy," her aunt responded. I picked them from the meadow just 2 blocks from here. What are those flowers called? Amy asked as she dried her hands. Well, and Amy started to search her thoughts. The yellow ones with a star shape and a trumpet structure and an orange bulb are called daffodils. They belong to a genus called Narcissus. The one with many white petals and the yellow floral disc is a daisy. And the ones with yellow hair-like petals are dandelions. Amy chuckled as she bit a piece of her cookie. They all start with the letter D. Amy always admired her aunt for her smartness. It was no wonder why she was Amy's teacher. But what about the purple ones? Oh, I almost forgot about that, her aunt replied. They don't start with the letter D. Those are called asters. They really stand out among the rest, she added. They're the only purple ones in the group. I can see that you are still in study mode even when it's already Friday afternoon, Amy, Emily commented. Why did you ask about the flowers? Well, she replied, I was wondering if transferring wasn't a bad idea after all. May I ask, what is it like in Dandasterton? Now that you've mentioned it, Aunt Italy always enjoyed talking with Amy. I found out that it is named after 2 flowers. Is that why you put those certain flowers in that pot? She asked. I noticed the flowers were different today. Observant little girl, Amy, her aunt spoke proudly. Anyways, Dandastorton is named after the dandelion flower and the aster flower. Your parents have been talking about that place, and as a teacher I've been reading about it. So I decided to pick some dandelions and some asters. I almost forgot about it until you asked me. So, before we end this Friday,